Okay, first, I just want to let everybody know that I'm going to go before the Lowndes County, I'm sorry, the Noxubee County Board of Supervisors on August the 3rd, their August meeting at 9:15. I'm on the agenda. The meeting starts at 9, so that means I'll go uh, earlier first, which is good. My only plan is to formally let them know that the project's ongoing. And of course, been a lot of people done a lot of work, and it will continue. So, um, and also, I do plan because my understanding is that they're in their budget period to mention that we could use a culvert to be able to access the cemetery. That has been broached already, and there hasn't been any big resistance. So really, that's it. Just to let them know what's going on as they go into their budget year, and then mention the possibility of getting a culvert. First off, just as a way of introduction, that's me. These are my cousins, Rebecca and Michelle Mansell, who are from Noxubee County. They grew up there. We have common great grandparents and great great grandparents, and our great great grandparents, Richard and Elizabeth Wilkins, are in Prairie Grove. This is a picture from when we were out there not too long ago. Really want to say up front that I have been in touch with Mark Ruff, who has done tremendous amount of work. We've had numerous texts and emails, and we've talked over the phone, and we'll continue to. And a lot of what I've discovered, he was based on his work. So anyway, just moving forward. First off, I'm just trying to provide the information that I've gathered now, and there's no question about this that there could be errors in here. Please let me know. If anything, project of this nature is going to have a chance of working, then it's going to take a lot of folks. But anyway, so the cemetery itself is in Section 1, Township 1, Range 16 East. That is the little section right there. This is Marion Moore, Road. You kind of see where that's carved out, and we're going to take a look at it from a couple different perspectives. This again is another look. Again, a little closer look, Marion Moore Road. The interesting thing about this, I forgot what this is from, but this indicates that the whole diamond-shaped area there where the cemetery is 3.3 acres. That's a lot of land to deal with anyway. But turns out it might not be that much for the cemetery. This again is another look where it shows, and this comes up a lot, that Wilkins Cemetery and Prairie Grove Cemetery here are the same, or are they different? I'm pretty convinced they are the same. They may have gone by different names at different times. There's been some question if there was anything on this side of the road, any cemetery. I don't think there is, and I can show you what I base that on in a minute. So the next thing I want to just take a look at, I went into something called historic aerials. Some of you may be familiar with it, and it is exactly as it implies. It's a database of aerial photos that go back to 1939. It kind of skips years, and you don't have them for a long time. But the 1939 really helps us. The earliest one that they have. So anyway, this same picture, this from a couple of years ago, you can see cemetery area is really grown over, and across the street is really grown over. Both of those. Again, that's Marion Moore Road. Okay, this is from 2012. You can see the cemetery area here is still really grown over. Not so much here. So about 15 years ago. Okay, this is from 1969. And you can see how the cemetery area has remained grown over for quite some time, but this appears to be cleared. So, and that's why I don't think there was ever a cemetery here. I think the reason this is grown over is because there were enough people who knew there was a cemetery in there that they didn't touch it. I think it would have been the same case here. Again, I don't know anything for sure, but that just tells me that perhaps there was no cemetery there. But the picture that's really interesting is this one from 1939, and this is the earliest one they have, and the next one is like 1955. But you can see how it looks like the front part of the cemetery is actually clear, and the back is still grown over. So really, this may be the only part that is actual cemetery, and that never was. And so I just kind of did a I made a similar pattern on Google Earth. I don't know how accurate that is, but according to those measurements, there might only be about an acre and a half of cemetery that we would have to deal with, which of course is a lot better than a little over 3 acres. And so this is kind of where I think it really gets interesting, because this addresses the question of whether, is this a white cemetery or a black and white cemetery? And I believe that it is a combined black and white cemetery, although there is now, just down the road, a still active Prairie Grove cemetery church that appears to be a predominantly African American church. But just to get a few names up here, one thing that's interesting is that the last two people who were buried, Catherine, actually that should be Catherine Samuels Taylor. She was a Samuels, was buried in 1963, and then a guy named Edmund Allen was buried in 1913. And I am relatively certain both of these people were black, and that'll kind of I'll make a further point with that later, and I'll show you why I think they are. Then, as we kind of move on over to what I'll call, you'll see that there's a divide here. We'll come up in a minute. I've marked the family plots. There are a lot more headstones that are visible. And by the way, I got these off of visible headstones. They're still there. And I'm going to show you a few family plots. There are others besides the one you see here, but I think it makes the point. Gilmore probably has the largest number of ancestors best there. Wilkins plot, that's our family's plot right there. And then there are others. I included this Sarah Jane Jones because she's interesting. First off, she was the first person buried who has a visible headstone now. All right. And I'm going to come back to that in a minute. The reason I say that is because I really don't know, but I think there is a chance that Sarah Jane Jones is also black, which would be interesting because not only do we have a cemetery that was one side black, one side white, which although not just unheard of, it was unusual, given the period. And it would be unusual, though, I think, that if there was mixed race throughout the cemetery. So anyway, she's interesting, but you get the idea. I think and there's reference to this in that 1975 document about the east half and the west half. This side appears to be the African American side. This side appears to be the white side, and we'll look at that. First off, now this is kind of how I don't know how well you can see this, but this is from the 1910 census, and it shows Edmund Allen as black, and then his entire family. His birth year does not line up exactly with with what's on his headstone, but that's really not uncommon for that when the census were taken by hand and all. So that indicates that Edmund Allen was black. And then also, I ran across something that I'm not sure, but this is maybe a black fraternal organization, Oddfellows type thing. But wherever I ran into that, it indicated that this was an African American group. So that's why I'm relatively certain Edmund Allen is black. And then with Catherine Samuels Taylor, she is listed specifically. This is the 1950 census. Catherine and her husband is listed on that stone. So Mackenzie, and that's an interesting notation. Only place I've ever seen that. But here, they are both. I'm confident that she is black, and then I'm pretty sure that's her. I got that off an ancestry, I think, family group, Samuel's family group. Again, not sure, 100% sure of anything. Just kind of what I think right now. So if you go back to this original picture, and again, these are my estimates. On the African American black side, we have 28,000 square feet of cemetery and 2 visible headstones. On the other side, it's a little larger, 38,000 square feet and about 30 visible headstones. But either way it goes, there's a lot of space in there, and particularly on the black side, you absolutely can see the telltale signs of unmarked graves, and there appear to be a lot of them. And I think there are more over here too. And when you go back to where Edmund Allen buried here, Catherine Samuels Taylor buried here, is it just because these guys chose to be buried on the far ends, or was it because there were and are people there? And I would say that's probably the case. Let's see, comes up next here. Okay, in terms of ownership of the land, and this is really an important thing, and to me, going to be the most difficult to identify. If you're able, to get any outside funding, you really gonna have to prove, who own the land. I'm again convinced that either the county owns it or nobody owns it, if that's possible. But so far, the only reference to the land, one is this is from 1933. 1933, and I think this is a foreclosure on actually Emma Wilkins' land. And if you read this carefully, or if you want to, it just basically says, it's on the market, but it singles out here the church, except for this land that's dedicated to the church, and it's talking about that very land. It mentions pages 100 or whatever the deed book up at the courthouse, and I went and looked at that, and turns out that I don't know if you read this or not, but I have it transcribed. This is from 1910. Okay, so this is before the 1933 foreclosure. And in this, it's much shorter, and maybe there's a longer document somewhere, but this, you can see where for $50, Emma Wilkins, this is 1910, by the way. Her husband, Charles, my great-grandfather, had died the year before, so she may just be getting things in order. But anyway, it talks about, it singles out, she's selling this land, but it singles out except for this 1 acre situated in the east corner 4, and it spells out the Prairie Grove Baptist Church. And by the way, the trustees who were these two guys that list trustees, these two guys are trustees of this church. So this is kind of a center point in time when we seem to know who owns the land, but we need to go both ways. We need to go back in time and forward in time, and that's just going to take some legwork in the courthouse, I think, but unless someone knows the easier way. So anyway, there's that. So the last thing that's really interesting is, there is a African American Prairie Grove church right down the road. That's what this blue is. That's where the let's say the historical one, the overgrown Prairie Grove is, and this is an active church. Oddly enough, I went to that's the cemetery right behind it, and I went, and no one has ever, that I can tell, marked these graves on Find a Grave, which is really unusual. But there are common names here, Samuel being one, and I'll go back to the Sarah Jane Jones. There is a Mary Jane Jones buried there. Now, I know Jane and Jones are some awfully common names, and it's totally just a guess, but it looks like there are connections between the two, and there are. But again, that's part of kind of what needs to be the historical aspects of it is where a lot more work needs to be done. So finally, this is just kind of what it looks like in there. This, according to my tree identifier, is an eastern cedar. I think that's Catherine Taylor Samuels' Samuel Taylor Monument. Um, but you can see, and it's really funny how this is it's changed. I've been in there 3 or 4 times, and every time I go in, I see something differently. The first time I was in, I just felt like this is so overgrown, it's impossible. But it's really, this is one of the larger trees out there, but the rest of them are all smaller. Um, and it's actually not. It's actually kind of attractive in there, and you'd be surprised how cool and pleasant it is in there. There were really, I've been in 3 or 4 times, and Michelle, Rebecca, and I were in there. There were really not a whole lot of bugs bothering us or anything. Amazingly pleasant in there, given what it looks like. Again, here's just giving you some idea. If we ever reach that stage, we have to ask the question, what do you cut? What do you leave? And then finally, there's a ditch that runs around the back of it. It's the very back side of the cemetery, which is kind of cool. But anyway, again, if you can make it down to the court, I'd love to meet some of y'all. I know I need to get over to the historical society. I have joined, but anyway, hopefully we'll be in touch and maybe get something done.